Hello, it's Jessica Okoro. Welcome to the Stepping into STEM podcast. We are still on a mission to expose 1 million of you to the STEM industry by 2023. Thanks for joining us, David. I'm going to run in and just start with an icebreaker. When you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up? You're still young now, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. I think like a lot of people, I thought about teaching or being a doctor. I think when you're young, those are the roles that are quite impressionable. But actually, as I moved into secondary school, I actually did see accountancy as a route for my career. And I think that's actually quite unusual. I think a lot of people fall into accountancy rather than it being an aspiration.
So how comes it became an aspiration? Did you have a role model, someone around you that was very much, in the field?
I had some family members who were accountants, and I've always really, really loved businesses and understanding how things work. And I knew from my family members that accountants are seen as trusted business advisors. So I just thought the accountancy qualification and profession would be a really solid foundation into a career in business. And then, of course, I grew up watching The Apprentice. What's not to love?
Yeah, 100%. Uncle Alan Sugar. So with regards to accountancy, it's quite maths heavy. Was you good at maths at school? Were you like a young Albert Einstein?
Definitely not. I would say I was comfortable with maths, but not when I first started at secondary school. There was definitely a period of adjustment where I had to work quite hard to understand the topics that we were learning about, and I quickly became more comfortable. And I think also there is a bit of a misconception with accountancy that the maths is really, really tough. Yeah. So yes, maths is involved, but at no point are you asked to, do algebra or trigonometry. If you can use a calculator, if you can do the basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, addition, you can do a career in accountancy.
Wow, that's quite interesting, because when I think of accountancy, I'm thinking of really big, complicated equations. And I know when I was at secondary school, I really struggled with maths and science, being dyslexic. So I think accountancy would have been far from my mind. I would have thought definitely wouldn't be able to, survive in that sector. When you struggled, did it give you reservations or fears about going into accountancy or furthering your interest in the career?
I think I'm someone who it probably challenged me more. And I think I also understood that maths is a core element of the profession, but there are other skills needed as well, such as being able to present information clearly and being able to adjust how you present that information based on the audience.
Yeah.
I took a more holistic view, I guess, of my skill set, and just had confidence that the maths would come.
No, I love that. I'm going to go into the first segment, which is the big move, and that's on the basis of you having moved to London, to now being at the London location for PwC. Why did you decide to move from Northern Ireland to London in the first place?
I think really it came down to personal choice. So when I was 18, I was deciding what I wanted to do after school, and I knew I wanted to go down the apprenticeship route. And there were a couple of opportunities in Belfast, and there were a couple in London, and I had always really, really wanted to spend some time living in London. In the end, I interviewed for a couple of roles, one in London, one in Belfast, and the one in London, I didn't really feel like it was a fit. And I had an offer from PwC in Belfast, so I proceeded with that, and I'm really, really glad that I made that decision. And I started in the Belfast office, but I guess the feeling of wanting to move away and try living somewhere new didn't really go away. And so after 20 years in Belfast, I thought it's time to make the move. And actually how I did it was really useful because I had my network in London who I'd been working with in the Belfast office. So when I moved over here, it was much easier to kind of embed myself in London life. And then I had some family who have moved to London as well. So it seemed like a good time.
Oh, I like that. And what's quite interesting is I'm assuming on the PwC program, they don't usually offer it as from the onset that you can move from, Belfast to London. So did you kind of pitch and ask to move? Was it you using your own initiative to do that?
Exactly so. So PwC definitely does have the opportunities to move around both within the UK and globally across our network of firms. But on this occasion, it was utilising my network and just having that conversation to see what was possible.
No, that makes sense. I love that.
I think it's really, really important to not underestimate the value and the impact that a conversation can have. And I know something that I've benefited at PwC has been just conversations. And I actually can't think of a time where I've asked to gain experience in a different area or do something and I've been told no. So there's quite a supportive culture, but just having that conversation and being clear about what you want to do, that's important.
No, I love that. Because normally when you're the youngest in the office or one of the youngest on the team, it's quite nerve-wracking trying to ask. And sometimes some people think of that as a big ask, and they're really being bold and some may think cheeky in their inexperience. But I love it that you're taking that initiative. Did the pandemic affect you much during the transition to London?
So yeah, I guess in some ways it did. So for one, I wasn't able to do flat viewings in person. So I ended up doing a lot of FaceTimes to see these apartments and meet my new potential flatmates, which was challenging. And actually, the place I first lived in, it didn't work out. And I had to move again 5 months later, which was not ideal in the pandemic. Moving is quite stressful. I did not appreciate how stressful moving is.
Especially from somewhere like Northern Ireland. I mean, if you're moving around London from like King's Cross to Peckham, I'm sure that's completely different. But, North Ireland or Belfast to London, and then once you're in London, whilst you're still trying to understand London, trying to move, it's a lot. I would find that quite traumatic.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I kind of laughed because when I moved from Northern Ireland to London, I had one carload of things. And in the space of 5 months, it took me 3 carloads to move my things to my new place. But yeah, no, I'm feeling much more settled now. And PwC has been really, really good about things as well. Over the summer, our offices were actually open. So it was great to be able to go in and meet my new team and see the new office. And that helped with the transition as well.
Wow, I love that. So, I mean, I love seeing things from a positive aspect, even if you're in a negative situation. What would you say has been a benefit during this unpredictable time?
So I turned 21 last week, actually, and it's kind of been a good opportunity to reflect on things. So 3 years ago, when my friends and I were deciding what we wanted to do after school, none of us ever could have imagined that the world would be the way it is now.
Yeah.
And I would be graduating this year had I have gone to university in a time when there is a lot of uncertainty and there aren't a lot of jobs on the market. And so my decision to do an apprenticeship at 18 has meant that I've had quite a secure position throughout the pandemic. And now I'm not worried about trying to find a job and competing with all of these graduates. So that has been a big takeaway for me, and just the security of having a job and knowing where I'm going to be. I think that is a massive benefit. And I guess just flexibility. anyone that had to commute before the pandemic knows that commuting can be draining, and just getting some of that time back, especially as we move into the brighter mornings and evenings to go for a walk, that has been a massive benefit for me as well.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. I'm going to go into the next segment, and it's called The Game Changer. Okay. And we're just talking about, you doing the big step of going into, the program and, taking the big step of not doing the standard route of going to university. How did you find out about the apprenticeship and the role at PwC? Was it advertised at your secondary school? Did you know somebody that was on the program?
Yeah, sure. So I have an older sister, and one of her friends, when she was in lower sixth, did a program called Business Insight Week at PwC.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is a program where you rotate around different teams for a week, and you get to kind of work on a project throughout the week. But it's a really, really good program because you get to see the work that each of these teams are doing, and you can make a more informed choice about future careers. And if you are thinking about the School Leaver program, then which team you would ultimately like to join. So I heard about that, and I decided straight away that when I was in lower sixth, that is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on this program and just spend some time in PwC and seeing what the opportunities were. And so I did the program, and I loved being in the office and seeing the work that everyone was doing. I think I mentioned before, I just really like seeing how things work, so it was really interesting for me.
Yeah.
And on the program, they explain PwC's opportunities. So whether that be a graduate position or a School Leaver position. So that gave me, that also allowed me, I guess, to compare between the two streams. And I liked the idea of the School Leaver program, because I think I didn't really want to spend any more time in full-time education just listening to the theory. I wanted to be out doing the actual work. I worked part-time when I was at school, and I enjoyed having that tiny bit of responsibility and also earning my own money as well. So yeah, it just seemed like the best way forward for me. And so I did the Business Insight Week over summer, and I think in August time, and then I interviewed for a position at PwC in early September. So I actually, in the end, did not end up applying for university. I was so sure that an apprenticeship and a School Leaver role was the way forward for me.
Oh, I love that. And didn't you find it quite overwhelming joining this corporate professional environment being so young?
So yes and no. I think any fears were kind of all on me, and it was because I had this perception that I was so young and almost what could I bring? But actually, as you get into the work, the role you're doing is actually not that different from a graduate, and there's a lot of support in PwC, especially in your first few months, to make it work. And I felt that I was actually picking things up quite quickly. And I think the other point I would make is that I have friends at university, and university life is not structured, and you have the choice of whether you actually want to attend your lectures, and no one
You're so right. I'm laughing right now because university life really is not structured whatsoever. I mean, there is a bit of structure. Actually, let's give university life, it's flowers. You have a timetable for uni, but there's no one that is forcing you to go to every lesson, every lecture. And you can literally flog off a whole term, and no one would necessarily know, other than it may pop up on the register. But yeah, you're right. It's the party life, and which is really important, and the socials, and so I do agree. So
actually, I felt like I was moving from one very structured environment, i.e. school, to a workplace which is still very structured because it
100%.
is different to university in that you do actually need to show up every day. But actually on the social side, I'm finding PwC to be a very, very social firm. Whenever pre-COVID, we had monthly socials as a Belfast office, and then quarterly socials within our kind of sub-teams, which really, really loved, and was a great opportunity to really get to know people. During the pandemic, we've kind of moved a lot of things online, so we're still having our socials, albeit virtually, but I think we will all look forward to being able to see each other in person again.
Yeah, no, I miss after work socials and meeting up in restaurants, and I love it. I used to love meeting people around the office. Tell me a bit about mentorship and finding someone that you could run to when things were really hard. Was you able to find a coach of some sort? Was you given one?
So PwC, actually, everyone in PwC gets what we call a career coach. Okay. And they are there to help you progress in your career. So identify your strengths and how you can use those in the project that you're working on, but also think about your stretch areas and areas where you can develop, and help you have those conversations to get the experience that you need to develop in those areas. So that has been really useful, and that is a really, really good starting point. Generally, your career coach is also someone independent of your project.
Okay,
so they're providing kind of an external lens as well.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there is no one who hasn't been through what you're going through before. So you can always ask, a person that is a year further on or a couple of grades above you for advice, because chances are they probably had similar thoughts.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I do believe in, utilizing the people, around you who are more experienced, and just pop it in your calendar and their calendar a 15-minute coffee, because that's just all you need sometimes. And just hearing someone talk about how relatable your feeling is can really help. So David, when you were an apprentice, what was your day-to-day like? And what was a week like for you when you were on site working at the Belfast office?
I guess completely varied, and it really depended on what stage of the project we were working on. So I've been working on in our client assets audit and advisory practice. So I work with banks and other financial institutions to check that they are safeguarding the money and assets they hold on behalf of their clients. So it's an area I didn't really know a lot about before. That
sounds very serious, David. That sounds like a very serious, real adult, senior, C-suite level job. I mean, was you doing that from the onset?
Yeah, so I was doing it right from the onset. And as I say, I did not know anything about the subject matter before I started, but we have a really, really good training program and lots of people around you to provide that support. So typically what that involves is understanding the processes that our clients have in place to keep this money and asset safe. So we would typically do an online meeting with them, and we would get them to talk us through and show on screen everything that they are doing to safeguard money and assets. And then we would go away and we would look against the rules that are set out by the government and look and see, actually, is this process compliant? And then it's a case of testing that throughout the year they have done everything that they said they would in the way that we expect them to do it. So actually the subject matter is really, really interesting, and it feels quite rewarding because ultimately we are helping to keep customers safe.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a really serious role. I mean, did you have lots of meetings? Did you have to go to different company sites, or was it very much from the PwC office?
So we can do a lot of our work remotely, and that has actually really benefited us during the pandemic, because certainly in my team, we were used to working remotely anyway. Yeah. So most of our interactions are via conference call. But we did, certainly in my first couple of years, we did get some client site visits as well. And so it was really, really nice to meet people in person. So you do have that opportunity as well, and it's great to also meet the team. We were supporting our London team, so it was great to meet them in person as well, and just build that rapport and have the social side as well.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to dive in quickly into the fact that you've kind of moved away from the apprenticeship role and now you're transitioning into the grad role. Am I correct?
Yeah, exactly so.
Could you give us some information into that?
Yeah, of course. So actually, whenever you join on the School Leaver program, a lot of our roles are 2 to 3 years long, although you are a permanent employee of PwC from day one. But my initial apprenticeship was for 2 years. So I actually transitioned onto that kind of graduate pathway after 2 years. Whereas obviously if I had have gone to university, it would have taken me 3 years to get to where I am now. As you move more into a graduate role, you take on more coaching responsibilities. So I have been doing more coaching to more junior staff members this year.
Oh, wow.
It's something, I really, really enjoyed because I got so much support whenever I first joined PwC and indeed now. And it's been really, really nice to pay that back and to also see the growth and development in the team as well.
I love that. And I mean, you've done the move. What advice would you give to someone that is moving away from home and starting a new role at such a young age like yourself?
So I actually, when I first moved to London, I met someone in the first couple of weeks and they said something and it really resonated with me. So I'll share it. They said they had just been offered a new role and they loved where they were at the minute and they didn't know whether they should move. But they said, I feel comfortable and I'm young and I'm too young to feel that comfortable.
Oh, wow.
And that really resonated with me. So whenever you're young, that's the best time to make the move because a lot of the time you don't have the same things holding you back. And I think it gets more difficult the longer you stay in a place to be able to leave it. So I would say just take the plunge, say try it out. The worst that happens is that you feel it hasn't worked and you go back to where you were and there's nothing wrong with that.
And starting again, there's nothing wrong with starting again. Yeah. And there's so many famous people that, that have done so well, who've started so much later on in their lives. And I think it was the person that owns KFC. I think he started really late. I don't know if you heard of the story about the Coca-Cola bottles and how, they only sold one bottle in the first year. I don't know if that story is actually true, but you see it on social media all the time. It's a great story, yeah. So I do agree with what you're saying. I mean, just start, just try it out. And if it goes wrong, you can just start again. And there's nothing wrong with starting again. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, David?
Ooh, in 5 years, I will be 26, which is a very scary thought.
There's nothing wrong with being 26, okay? Just putting it out there. Okay, some of us old a lot. We're loving our 20 older years. So, yeah, it's something to be scared of, okay?
Embrace it.
Embrace it.
I'm due to qualify, all being well, fingers crossed, as a chartered accountant in July 2022. So I guess post-qualifying, I would like to keep moving through the ranks at PwC and I guess developing my coaching style and, as I say, really giving back and just learning more about my subject matter as well. But I love to travel and I didn't leave the UK at all in 2020. So over the next 5 years, I want to make up for that and do lots of traveling, whether that be on holiday or if the opportunity presents itself with PwC, then I think I would happily take it.
I love that. And if you could go back in time and you could do things differently whilst you were on the apprenticeship, it could be one case study, it could be how you managed an interview, how you overthought something during a meeting, what would it be? I
actually don't think that I would change anything.
I love that.
So I made mistakes along the way, along the journey. I think everyone did.
Yes, we all do.
I think I learned more from making those mistakes than I did from ever doing something right the first time. And they helped me to identify now where things could potentially not go as planned and take preemptive action to, I guess, prevent that from happening. And also highlight things to my team that whenever they're doing things for the first time, helping them to learn from my mistakes as well. So yeah, I don't think I would change anything. When you make mistakes, you just have to embrace them and learn.
Yeah, I love that. I love that way of thinking about, your past and just being happy and content with how you've lived your life. It's great. I love that. And if there is one piece of advice you could give someone that's going to apply for this program, what would it be?
I would say the application process is, and this goes for any role, the application process is as much about the organization learning about you as it is for you to learn about the organization. So I would say if you enjoy the application process, chances are you're going to enjoy your time there.
The application process. David, application processes are usually very challenging and very scary. Like the interview, the forms you have to fill out, the information. Or would you say that it's not as bad as I'm assuming it would be?
I don't think it's nearly as bad as you perceive it to be. So, I mean, I actually really enjoyed the interview process because I love the debate, and I was able to ask questions and get a feel for who was working at PwC. And as I say, I just think the chances are, if you like your interviewers, it's going to be reflective of the culture of the company. So if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not. And I mean, I've seen both sides. So with PwC, I had a great application process, great interview, really, really enjoyed the process, and enjoyed the interview process because of my interviewers. But I also have seen the other side, and I mentioned that I had gone for another role in London as well, and I actually really didn't enjoy the process, and I didn't think that it was a fit culturally.
No, I that makes a lot of sense actually, because I can say firsthand that I've struggled with some interview processes, but in all fairness, my first interview for my first corporate job was phenomenal, and the people that interviewed me, I'm still friends with them now. I still, meet up with them for a coffee, and I do feel that they represented the company very well, because when I joined, everyone had a similar kind of energy, similar kind of warmth, very inviting. So yeah, I do agree with what you said.
And I think that's another example of just not underestimating the impact that a conversation can have. An interview is just a conversation, but you've just shown that you had this conversation and actually you're still in touch with these people now.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, David, I have really enjoyed talking to you today. You are so knowledgeable. I've learned so much, and I could just imagine you being the head of PwC one day, and I'm going to say, do you know what? I interviewed him and I knew he was going to make it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really good.
And to our listeners, thank you for listening. Please subscribe to our podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn @STEM Socials. I have been your host, Jessica Okoro, and we are still on this mission to expose 1 million of you to the STEM industry by 2023. It's been great having David today, and to hear more stories like David's, listen to the next episode of Stepping into STEM. See you next time. Bye.